السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال لا تثريب عليكم اليوم يغفر الله لكم وهو أرحم الراحمين. Respected brothers and elders, mothers and sisters in Islam, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us in the company of the righteous in this world. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raise us amongst the righteous on the day of Qiyamah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fill our lives with mercy and rahmah, as all of us are in the need of the rahmah and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The ayat of the Quran that I recited in front of you is from the 13th juz, the 13th sipara, surah number 12, surah Yusuf, and this is verse number 92. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this verse of the Quran is saying, mentioning to us by saying, Qal, and say, O Prophet Yusuf, La tathriba alaykum al-yawm. And in this very particular verse of the Quran, and as we all know that the word Qal, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses in multiple places in the Quran, refers to many of His prophets where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands them to inform their nation. So in this very ayat of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions to Yusuf alayhi salam and says, Qal, O Yusuf, announce to your people, La tathriba alaykum al-yawm. There is no blame on you today. Yaghfirullahu lakum. May Allah forgive you. Wahu arhamur rahimin. For indeed He is the most merciful of the merciful. Now, in this particular ayat of the Quran, for many of us, we know the setting of this ayat of the Quran. And let's step back a little. And then I want to connect this ayat to the seerah of Rasulullah. And that's the lesson that I'm hopeful that I can take back and all of us can take back. So what we know from the seerah of Rasulullah or from Tariq, that Yaqub alayhi salam had 12 children. And the name of Yaqub alayhi salam in the previous tradition or the previous nation, his name was Israel. That was the name of Yaqub alayhi salam. So the nation known as Bani Israel were the progeny or the children of Yaqub alayhi salam. The 12 sons of Yaqub alayhi salam became the 12 tribes of Bani Israel. And that's how at the time of Musa alayhi salam, when they were crossing the sea and they asked for separate paths and separate locations, these were the progeny or the children of Yaqub alayhi salam. And the word Israel is something very similar to the Arabic word of Abdullah, the servant of Allah. Abd, Allah, servant of Allah. Israel also is the servant of the Almighty. So this was the laqab or the title of Yaqub alayhi salam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had bestowed him with 12 sons. And as we all know that one of the sons, Yusuf alayhi salam, was someone that was really beloved to the father. And in a sense of jealousy and all the things that occurred, that the brothers planned to throw Yusuf alayhi salam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Kareem and He is generous, that He takes him from the depths of the well to the excellence and the heights and the honor of the society at that time. And we all know the long story after multiple conditions of him being thrown inside the jail cell. And again, subhanAllah, brothers and sisters, point to understand is that it wasn't small difficulties that Yusuf alayhi salam went through. It was a young age. And I want you to think about this so that we can reflect on the meaning and then from the seerah, inshallah. At the young age, he was separated from his father and mother. And he was very, very close to his family. Meaning a child who wakes up from sleep and shares his dream to the dad means that he's very, very close. So from a very innocent age, he's completely abandoned and separated from his family. And not only this, that he's sold as a servant in the markets of Egypt. And then from those difficulties, he's put upon a trial and a fitna where, sometimes you can take physical pain. But when the pain comes on your honor and your dignity, you can't take this. If someone was to physically hurt someone, you can take that. But if someone was to blame your honor, that this person's adat, habit, or particular characteristics are bad, that hurts them more than ever. So they blamed Yusuf alayhi salam of being engaged in haram actions. Right? That's the worst that you can come to a level, and he even more. And then not only that, for multiple years, and without any conviction, being thrown inside the jail cell, and thrown inside, and even forgotten that he was thrown inside. And years have passed, and it's very easy for us to say, but hard to even imagine how he went through this. And after all of that had occurred and everything transpired, and when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Yusuf alayhi salam the ultimate power and the strength, and then at this moment, what happens? The brothers show up, and multiple, travelings, and finally, Yusuf alayhi salam tells them, and he says, isn't this the same thing that had happened to the brother of this man, meaning the person that you're talking about, Binyamin, which was the youngest of the brothers? And they say, Anta Yusuf? Are you Yusuf? So he said, yes, I'm Yusuf, and this is my brother. So at this moment, and I want you now to go back to this ayat of the Quran, verse number 91 and 92. So the brothers, when they noticed that this is Yusuf alayhi salam, that's the same brother that we threw inside the well, and now he has come to this point. So they said, قَالُوا تَاللَّهِ لَقَدْ آثَرَكَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. He says, indeed, Allah has honored you and gifted you with this respect above and beyond us. So they say, they admitted. قَالَ تَاللَّهِ. Tallah means just like you take the oath on the name of Allah. لَقَدْ آثَرَكَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has truly preferred you above and beyond us, over us, and we have surely been sinful. We made a mistake. Ajib thing ulama have mentioned is that the brothers never asked for forgiveness. They never said, Yusuf, forgive us. The ayat of the Quran says, when they realized it was Yusuf alayhi salam, they said, indeed, Allah has honored you much more than what we have ever expected Allah would have given you. And indeed, we are amongst those who are the wrongdoers. They never verbally asked for forgiveness. And subhanAllah, this was the greatness of the Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, that without even them asking, he forgave all of them for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And not only this, but he says, لَا تَثْرِيبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْيَوْمِ, that from today you will not even be blamed for the wrongs that you have committed. And after forgiving them, he never said that I forgave you. He says, يَغْفِرُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. It is Allah who has forgiven you, and Allah is the most merciful. Meaning, even at this stage, he never took the highlight upon himself, the spotlight that I forgave you. He said, it is the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning so much difficulties after difficulties after difficulties. And then they admitted to their mistake and they didn't ask for forgiveness. And he still forgave, and after forgiving, he said, it wasn't me, it is Allah who forgave, and He's the most merciful. And this particular ayat of the Quran is the exact ayat of the Quran that the Prophet ﷺ recited on the day of the victory, Fath Makkah. This is the exact ayat that Rasulullah ﷺ recited. As we know that when the Nabi of Allah ﷺ had migrated towards Medina, it was his dream to enter Makkah. It was his dream. He loved Makkah. And as I said this previously as well, when him and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu were leaving the city of Makkah, he looked back and he looked at Makkah from the top of the mountain and said, oh Makkah, I love you. I would have never left you if my people didn't force me. I would have never left you. And then the Nabi of Allah went. He tried after a few years, 6 years to come. He was stopped in Hudaybiyah. He was not allowed to enter. He was sent back. Then the Nabi of Allah, Allah gave him the great victory, which is known as the victory of Makkah, the Fatah Makkah. Ulama had mentioned that Rasulullah, when he began the journey of Fatah Makkah, he sat upon his camel, which was known as Al-Qaswa, which brings to me that there's so many things that we can say from Sirah. The Sirah is so beautiful. So amongst the Sirah of Rasulullah was that he even named his animals. So if someone has a pet, right, and of course, can we keep a pet? Can we not keep a pet? What could be kept? What could not be kept? This is a whole fiqh and Islamic science to itself. But any animal that the Nabi of Allah ﷺ had, he actually named them. Right? He named them. And that is from famous hadith as well. Imam Shafi rahimahullah ta'ala, one story after the other. It's going to take 5 minutes. You have 5 more minutes, guys? You have 5 minutes? Allahu Akbar. Imam Malik rahmatullah alayhi was a great scholar of his time. The only Imam who lived in Medina and passed away in Medina. Imam Malik, amongst the 4 great Imam, was the only Imam that was from the city of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, only left Medina once in his life because he wanted to be buried in the city of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Imam Malik rahmatullah alayhi used to give the halaqah of hadith in the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? This is the honor that he taught hadith. One day Imam Malik rahmatullah alayhi is teaching the halaqah of hadith, and his tartib and way of teaching was that he would say a hadith and he would ask the public, anyone knows the answer? Anyone knew the answer, and he would say, that's correct, let's move on. If no one knew the answer, he would explain to them. That's how he would teach. He said a hadith, and now when he said this hadith, no one knew the answer. All the way in the back, there was an elderly man, and next to them was a young boy, young man, late teens. So the young teen says, uncle, I'm kind of scared to give the answer, but this is the answer. Can you just give the answer? He says, you're going to get me in trouble. This is Imam Malik. You're going to get me in trouble. He says, no, I'm pretty sure this is the answer. So the elderly man says, Imam, this is the answer. He says, yes, that's correct. Next question. The young kid says, this is the answer. So now he got a little confident. He gave the answer. So Imam Malik rahmatullah alayhi said, Hazrat, you don't belong there. Like, you come to the front. Why are you sitting in the back? You're all the way in the back. You deserve to be here. You know everything. You should be amongst the people teaching. So he couldn't resist. He got up and he sat next. So the third hadith, Imam Malik was reading and he asked, what's the answer? He says, that young person was telling me. It's not me. It's that young kid right there. Who told me the answers? So Imam Malik said, it was Imam Shafi rahmatullah, the young man, Imam Shafi. So Imam Shafi was a young man. So Imam Malik rahmatullah took him home. At night, Imam Shafi was a famous person, young alim, young scholar. So the daughters of Imam Malik prepared a large meal and placed it in the guest room where he was staying. They put the water for wudu and for him to rest, and water for tahajjud. Everything was put. Next morning, the time came for Fajr. Imam Malik came and Shafi, let's go to Masjid Rasulullah sallallahu make Fajr. They went, the daughters went to pick up the food. They went, the whole food was gone. And the water for tahajjud was still there. And the daughters are like, we thought this man was a pious man. He ate all the food and he didn't even wake up for tahajjud. And the water is still there. So when they came back, they said, Dad, we have a question. And the question, these were the people with clean hearts, right? So they said, Dad, we have a question. And the question is, we thought this man was a really pious person. He ate everything. And secondly, he didn't even wake up for tahajjud. So Imam Malik rahmatullah alayhi said, my daughters have it. He knew what was the reason, but he asked, Shafi, what's the reason? The whole food and no water for tahajjud? He said, Imam, the nur that I received from the halal rizq that you had, I couldn't resist the morsel and I kept on taking, and I felt it was the nur that was getting inside. Your halal earning and the chastity, meaning the iman of your daughters who cooked it, had the impact on the food that was being cooked. And that's why, brothers and sisters, what we eat and where it's cooked has an impact in our lives as well. Who cooked it? In one condition that we cooked it, right? I have a very good friend of mine, Mufti Kamani. I asked him, he said, I asked my mothers once that there was a house that he said they had, and then they got a bigger house. So he said, I asked my mother, right after he passed away, he was standing with me, he told me this. He says, which house did you like? The small one that we had, or the big house that we got? So she said, I love the small house that we had. He says, Mom, why? The larger house is so much more beautiful. She says, no, the smaller house, when I used to make the bread, it was facing the Qibla, so I was always making dua. This house is much fancier, but I don't face the Qibla when I cook food for you, right? So even the one who cooks has an effect. So Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi said, Imam, every morsel that I took, it was nur going inside of me. And this night, from this one hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Aba Umayr, ma fa'alaka bin Nughayr. There was a young kid in Medina, his name was Abu Umayr, and he had a small bird known as Nughayr. So Rasulullah ﷺ was once walking by and he said, Oh Abu Umayr, what happened to your little birdie who passed away? So from this hadith, he said, I extracted 32 masail of Islamic fiqh. From this one hadith, I extracted because of what Allah gave me through the halal rizq that you provided for me. So going back to this hadith is that you can name your animals as well. Rasulullah did. Anyway, this is a side story. So Rasulullah named his animal known as Qaswa. So his camel was known as Al-Qaswa. He was sitting on it. The Nabi of Allah, when he entered the city of Mecca, the hadith mentions that his forehead was touching the back of the camel. That's how humble he was, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the victory over the people of Mecca. And he entered inside. And people like Hind and Abu Sufyan and all of those that they never wanted to come close towards Islam, they saw the akhlaq of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when all of the people of Mecca with difficulty and torture and hardship, we all know the 13 years of persecution, the 8 more years of difficulty, all of that, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam openly in front of the people of Mecca recited this ayat of the Quran. And he said, "La tathriba alaykum." You will not be blamed for anything that you have done. You have been forgiven, for indeed Allah is the most merciful and most forgiving. And this was the akhlaq. And for those that never wanted to come close to Islam, Allah changed their hearts as well. So my dear respected brothers and elders, akhlaq and manners, characteristics of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his life is the greatest example for all of us. The month of Ramadan is to reflect over our own akhlaq, our own lives, our own manners, to be able to forgive for the sake of Allah, to be able to connect bond and blood ties and all things that Allah has granted for all of us. And this ayat of the Quran is a great reminder for all of us. For indeed, forgive, grant, provide, but keep your eyes with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and upon the blessings and the ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Forgive me for a little delay, but this is the ayat of the Quran. This is the 12th juz of the Quran. This is the 13th juz of the Quran, 13th sipara. This is surah number 12, surah Yusuf. This is verse number 92. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Yusuf alayhi salam, O Yusuf, qal la tathriba alaykum al-yawm. Announce to the people, meaning your brothers who have come upon you, that there will be no blame upon you. Yaghfirullahu lakum. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forgiven you. وَهُوَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. For indeed, He is the most merciful of those who show mercy. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the understanding to reflect upon it, inshallah. قال لا تثريب عليكم. Which? قال لا تثريب عليكم. It's قال لا تثريب عليكم. Maybe it's a misprint from that app itself. Yeah, it's قال. Maybe it's a misprint from that. It's قال. سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك سبحان ربك رب العزة